More than 2,000 years ago, the emperors of China began constructing great defensive walls to protect their northern frontiers. Even today, the remains of these ancient ramparts and towers scar the borderlands. Hundreds of thousands of men literally pounded this mighty edifice out of the earth. Finally, in the 16th century, they built the greatest fortifications ever created by human hand, a stone colossus that became the national icon of China. The Great Wall. What made the Middle Kingdom build this giant walled frontier? No one truly knows all the facets of the walls that snake across thousands of kilometers of North China. What have these walls to say about the world they were built to protect? Armies of tourists pay their respects to the stone ramparts north of Beijing that have given the world our image of the Great Wall. But what is its true story? The final years of the 18th century are the golden afternoon of the Chinese Empire. It's an ancient culture with unique rites and rules cut off from the rest of the world. But the cocoon the Middle Kingdom has spun for itself has become fragile. For several months there has been a British trade delegation in China. Time enough for 12-year-old Thomas, traveling with the delegation, to learn Chinese.
Thomas, my son, there you are. Come and help us, please.
As an unofficial interpreter, he supplies valuable services to the ambassadors.
Anyway, do you understand what
Finally, the court officials inform the foreigners that the emperor is ready to receive them in his summer residence, 7 days' ride from the capital, Beijing.
He said that this trunk cannot go to Yiheyuan.
On this occasion, the delegation will finally be able to present an outstanding example of British craftsmanship to the Emperor of China. The carriages they brought to China all the way from England. But when they offer to make the ruler a gift of these splendid vehicles, the Mandarin's reaction is astonishment and disapproval.
The emperor don't like it.
The officials assure them that His Sublime Majesty would never sit in such a palanquin, for no one, ever, must sit higher than the emperor. And the coachman not only sits higher, but with his back to his passenger.
We'll see about that. Come on, gentlemen.
The Englishmen will, of course, travel to the emperor in their coach. The English trade delegation representing King George is led by Lord Macartney, aided by Sir George Staunton. Their mission is to open the Chinese market to the products of the British Empire. A great procession accompanies the English visitors from the Forbidden City to the Summer Palace. Three days out of Beijing, the mandarins and officers take the delegation over the Gubeikou Pass. McCartney and his colleagues are treated to a sight that few Europeans have ever beheld. The Great Wall. Nothing will keep the Englishmen in their coaches. They scramble over the wall, overwhelmed by their admiration for the architects and builders of this structure. But Lord McCartney notices that his Chinese escorts remain completely unmoved. He later wrote, "The Mandarins appeared rather uneasy and impatient at the length of our stay upon the wall. They were astonished at our curiosity, though few of them had ever visited it at all." Lord McCartney was otherwise less than impressed by Chinese cultural achievements, but overwhelmed by this most stupendous work of human hands, he continued, "This wall was built above 200 years before the Christian era. China must have been not only a very powerful empire, but a very wise and virtuous nation, to establish at once what was then thought a perpetual security for them against future invasion." The accounts of these first European tourists have influenced our image of the Great Wall ever since. But these British visitors had no idea that the stone colossus they were admiring was only about 200 years old. This huge structure had been built in the 16th century to stand guard over the heart of the Middle Kingdom, after the Gubeikou Pass had been the gateway for an invasion that shook the empire to its core. The story begins in Beijing. This is where the emperor of the Ming dynasty lives, in the Forbidden City. This is the center of the world. From here, the emperor rules over all under heaven. In splendid audiences, the Son of Heaven demonstrates his power. Hundreds gather in front of the Hall of Perfect Harmony to pay homage to their ruler. Like everything else that happens at court, this ceremony follows a strict ritual. A state without ritual is a plough without a blade, they say. And like the pole star in the heavens, the emperor stands at the center of the earth. He is the head and the center point of the Middle Kingdom. And hardly any other ruler of the Ming dynasty embodies this principle more than Emperor Jiajing, who has sat on the dragon throne since 1522. At that time, China regarded all foreign peoples as barbarians. Diplomatic contacts and trade relations with other peoples are considered entirely unnecessary. The Middle Kingdom is sufficient unto itself. Even the right to pay tribute to the emperor is an honor that only the emperor himself can grant. A delegation of Mongolian nomads appear before the officials of the Middle Kingdom. They have a message for Emperor Jiajing. Not for the last time, the Mongols ask the emperor for permission to pay a tribute. They bring valuable gifts in the hope that the emperor will present a gift in return. Only when this ritual is completed can trading begin. The delegation has come from Hohhot, headquarters of the Mongol prince Altan Khan. Hohhot is just 400 kilometers from the Forbidden City. Altan Khan lives in a palace he's had built on Chinese lines. He's a great admirer of Chinese culture, and he's broken with the tradition of his forefathers in another way. He's the first Mongol leader since Genghis Khan to build a permanent fortified city. But his people still live in yurts, the traditional round tents of the nomads of the steppe. They live entirely from their livestock, wandering over the steppe. They pitch their yurts wherever they find grazing land for their herds. For the weakest of the nomads, the children and the elderly, the long winters are a struggle for survival. Many don't make it through. The Chinese to the south know all about their suffering. Chinese sources report. In spring, they often beg our patrols to buy their cattle, 1 ox for a pickle or so of rice or beans. Some would bring hides or horsehair, hoping to stave off starvation for 1 more day. For the nomads, there's no way out. Only trade with their Chinese neighbors, who possess limitless rice and grain, could bring an end to their hardship. But in the imperial palace, behind the walls of the Forbidden City, no one is interested in the barbarians' troubles. Here in the center of the world, the ruler's priority is to carry out the prescribed rituals that will guarantee order in the universe. Even having to consider Altan Khan's request for trade relations is an affront to the emperor. The idea of trading on equal terms with the Mongols is completely unimaginable. The emperor had already demanded that the character representing barbarians had to be written as small as possible on all official documents. A price is put on Altan Khan's head, and future Mongolian ambassadors will be executed. But the Chinese peasants in the border region know exactly what their emperor's policy will mean for them. Now the nomads will take with force what the emperor has denied them. The peasants don't have long to wait. Mongol horsemen stream across the empire's northern borders. The wheel of history, which has revolved around violence and plunder for more than 1,500 years, is turning again. Those the Mongols spare will starve in the ravaged fields.
In the Forbidden City, there were two schools of thought. They had different views as to how to put an end to the raids. One side argued for trade relations. The other wanted a military response. But a military response carried the risk of defeat. Since they couldn't agree on trade or on war, they made a compromise.
Thus was the decision explained that the emperor finally announced. Barbarians prefer aggression. We are more suited to defense. On the command of the emperor, General Weng Wanda, leader of the border troops, reports to the Forbidden City to receive his orders. General Weng Wanda is appointed Supreme Commander of the capital's defense forces. His mission is to reinforce the garrisons of Datong and Xuanfu and to secure the capital with a long wall. Weng Wanda's fortifications to the northwest of Beijing form part of a much larger defense system, the 9 border garrisons. Strung out like beads on a chain, they run from the easternmost to the westernmost point of the Chinese Empire. The last outpost in the west is the fort of Jiayuguan. Jiayuguan means pass to the beautiful valley. Only the 5,500-meter peak of Mount Qilian stands higher than the powerful fortress. According to legend, the master builder of the fort calculated the construction materials so precisely that when they finished, just 1 brick was left over. It's still there, on the side of a tower. Close by, the first tower of the Ming Wall rises up, a lonely outpost on the edge of the steppe. In the south, the wall abruptly ends on the cliffs of the river Beda. On the other side of Jiayuguan Fort, the wall continues eastwards. Over the centuries, wind and weather have torn gaps in the wall. For here, it's not made of stone, but of rammed earth, a material used for buildings and walls in China since time immemorial. Sections of the wall run parallel to an older set of earth defenses built around the year 1000. When General Weng Wanda's task is completed, the northwest of China is completely sealed off. The capital, Beijing, is protected by its own ring of walls. The Ordos, the northern region enclosed by a huge curve of the Yellow River. It has always been the gateway for the nomads into China. Here too, though wind and weather have done their worst, the wall and its towers can still be made out on the crags above the river. The garrison forts were the outposts of this defensive outer wall. Today, their use is strictly non-military. Their 6-meter-thick earth walls provide shelter to the farmers' herds. But nearly 500 years ago, they faced their greatest military test. March 1549, Shuangfu. The Chinese are fighting off another Mongol raid. General Weng Wanda defends the city. The earth shakes as Altan Khan's army passes the fortress. Showdown at the Great Wall. The Chinese general signals an attack. Weng Wanda's tactics have blocked the Mongol retreat. Though battered, the wall is not beaten. The Mongol horsemen have suffered severe losses. What future now for Altan Khan? From the middle of his retreating hordes, he sends a message to the Chinese defenders. Is it an admission of defeat? Did this raid cost too much? But Altan Khan's message contains a naked threat. If trade is not allowed, his men will be in the streets of Beijing.
那么我们说呢，明朝长城呢，它固然是很坚固的，这一点是在历史上也是。
The Ming Dynasty's Great Wall still has the reputation of being impenetrable. Enormous sums were invested, and millions of people were recruited to build it. The soldiers manning it were excellently trained, excellently equipped. And yet, the Mongols didn't give up. Somewhere on such a long frontier, there had to be a place where they could break through. That place would be the Gubeikou Pass, north of Beijing.
古北口呢，就是这样。
The Chinese don't expect an attack at the Gubeikou Pass. It's a forgotten corner of the mountains defended by a handful of troops. The gigantic fortifications so admired by Lord Macartney have not yet been built. The attack of the Mongolian forces is a complete surprise. It's almost too easy. The road to Beijing lies open. Altan Khan keeps his promise. It's just 80 kilometers to Beijing. Officially, Beijing is defended by a force of 140,000 men. But less than half of these are actually under arms. General Weng's victory at the gates of the fort has made the Chinese complacent. At the sight of the advancing Mongol hordes, the defenders run. Altan Khan's men tear through the suburbs of Beijing, plundering and burning. For 3 days they advance. At last, even the emperor, deep inside the Forbidden City, can no longer ignore them. From within the walls of his ordered universe, Emperor Jiajing watches chaos overtake the outside world. There's nothing he can do. On September 30th, 1550, Altan Khan draws up his troops before the Anding Gate, the place where the Chinese traditionally hold their victory parades. He has reached his goal, the very heart of the empire. A prisoner of war is sent with a message to the emperor. Will it be a demand for his abdication? An ultimatum for the handover of the city? Does Altan want control of the whole empire? The contents of the message cause confusion in the palace. Altan Khan once again requests the emperor's permission to set up trading posts on the northern borders. But the sublime ruler has no intention of agreeing to the request of a barbarian. To regain control of an extremely delicate situation, the emperor summons his high officials. They decide to take refuge in courtly protocol. The court will inform Altan Khan that they have a number of reasons to doubt that his message is genuine. Number one, it is not in the script of the barbarians. Number two, the message did not reach the emperor by the appropriate means. The sublime ruler therefore demands that Altan Khan withdraw his forces at once, and that he make another formal request for trading relations via the garrison at Xuanfu. The court's tactics worked. Altan Khan withdrew from Beijing. His decision still puzzles historians today.
就俺答而言，他来进攻长城沿线。
There is one possible, very interesting explanation for this, that Altan Khan really didn't want to conquer China. He really did only want to establish trade relations. Now, 400 years before, Genghis Khan had had a quite different goal. He wanted to take over all the land south of the Yellow River. He wanted to control the Middle Kingdom, and he succeeded.
Mere months after Altan Khan's attack, the Chinese open up trading posts at some of the northern forts. Recently, the remains of a trading station were found at Yulin Garrison. Archaeologists uncovered the foundations of a gate here in this wall, through which the merchants could pass in and out. But the new freedom of movement didn't last long. By the next year, the markets were closed down. That was when construction began on the greatest defensive structure China and the world had ever seen. Between 1550 and 1644, the stone dragon came to life. China's Great Wall was completed. And the wall became a monument to the closed world view of the Ming Empire. It enclosed their own universe and excluded everything that was foreign. To the north of Beijing, it curves majestically through the mountain ranges. It follows the natural line of the mountain peaks, reaching breathtaking heights before plunging into the deepest ravines. At its eastern end, in Shanhaiguan, it strides straight into the Yellow Sea. From this head of the dragon to the first earthen tower in the west, the Ming Wall is more than 6,000 kilometers long. The sometimes bizarre route taken by this wall has led many experts to believe that more than just defensive considerations went into its planning. For generations, the Chinese had believed in the practice of feng shui, the teachings of wind and water. Feng shui experts were probably consulted and obeyed before the building of the wall began, to make sure that the forces of nature would work in its favor. But when it came to the construction itself, spiritual aspects took second place. It was all about quality, efficiency, and speed. An army commander was in charge of each building detail. He was responsible for seeing that they keep to the timetable, if necessary, with the use of force. Most of the workers were recruited from the army or were pressed into service as civilians. The speed and harshness with which the plans were executed put a terrible strain on both men and the supply of materials. one knows how many victims the wall claimed. We're told that a 3-kilometer section of wall was completed in 600 days by just 3,000 men. The older walls of compressed earth could use materials that lay at hand, but the materials for the Ming Wall of the 16th century had to be manufactured. This meant an extensive network of quarries, kilns, and the supply routes to connect them. Countless brickworks were created for the greatest building site of the empire. The costs of this gigantic project became a heavier and heavier burden on the state. Bearers carried the bricks from the kilns to the construction sites in the mountains. Some traveled 80 kilometers. It took just 100 years to build the greatest defensive fortifications the world had ever known. But the Great Wall is not a single wall at all. It's actually a system of several defensive lines. Watchtowers are strung out along the main wall. When the enemy is spotted, they light an alarm beacon. In the meantime, the 50 to 100 men in each tower hurry along the top of the wall to the point of the attack. Meanwhile, reinforcements arrive from the garrison towers, which hold up to 10,000 battle-ready soldiers. At least that's the theory. The reality was rather different. For months on end, the border guards were banished to the frozen mountain regions, exposed to the cruel weather. Building the wall had brought the Ming dynasty to the edge of ruin. And discipline among the soldiers was poor. Whether mercenaries or draftees, they would go months without pay. They waited in vain for the promised waterproof clothing. There was no real supply chain. And yet taxes were constantly being increased throughout the empire. Money regularly disappeared long before it got to the frontiers, into the pockets of corrupt officers and officials. The completion of the wall brought with it the financial and spiritual bankruptcy of the Ming dynasty. In 1644, a rebel army led by a peasant, Li Sicheng, plundered and pillaged its way towards Beijing. And there's a second threat to the creaking dynasty in Beijing. On the steppes, a powerful enemy is gathering, 100 years after Altan Khan, the Manchu. At the eastern end of the wall at the Dragon's Head, an army of Manchu horsemen has gathered. Close by is the fortress of Shanhaiguan. Calligraphy decorating the East Tower announces its proud name, the first pass under heaven. This fortress protects the plain between the mountains and the Dragon's Head at the edge of the Yellow Sea. In 1644, the first pass under heaven is the scene of a fateful decision that will shake the Middle Kingdom to its core. The commander of Shanghai Guan is General Wu, one of the last army commanders still loyal to the Ming dynasty. The advance guard of the Manchu are camped in plain sight, but they make no attempt to take the fortress. They're waiting. By May 1644, the situation in the empire is hopeless. Li Sicheng, the rebel leader, has taken control of the Forbidden City. The emperor is dead. But General Wu has refused to go over to the rebels. It may still be possible to throw them out of Beijing and save the dynasty. Then General Wu receives news from Beijing. It's about the rebel leader Li Sicheng. Li Sicheng has taken General Wu's father hostage. He demands that the general swear allegiance to him as the new ruler of the Forbidden City, or his father will die. Then the ambassador hands General Wu a letter, supposedly from his father. The old man begs the general to obey the new ruler at once and so save his life. His obligations to his own father must override his loyalty to the Ming dynasty. And a gift from Li Sicheng should make his decision easier. How would the general decide? Did he have a choice at all? On May the 27th, 1644, at dawn, General Wu opens the gates of his fortress to the invading Manchu armies. Rather the Manchu ruling the empire than a peasant on the dragon throne. The Manchu expel the rebels from the Forbidden City, and they take power for themselves. They found a new dynasty that will rule the Middle Kingdom until the year 1911. They call themselves the Qing, the pure ones. "150 years after the gates of China were opened to his ancestors, a Qing emperor receives a British trade delegation for the first time. Lord Macartney had refused to kowtow, the traditional gesture of humility before the emperor. In Chinese etiquette, this is an insult. But that wasn't the only reason Macartney failed to establish trade links with China. "We do not have the slightest need of your country's manufactures," is the judgment of the Son of Heaven. For the emperor, the British envoys are no more than barbarians from a distant, unknown corner of the world. Foreigners who begged to be given the honor of paying him tribute. The British envoy's mission is a complete disaster. Macartney had admired the Great Wall of stone, but he had stumbled on another invisible wall, a wall that had surrounded the Middle Kingdom for 2,000 years. Nearly 50 years later, Thomas Staunton, who had accompanied the mission as a boy, would make an impassioned speech in Parliament calling for war against China to enforce England's right to trade. These barbarians brought down the Chinese Empire without scaling any walls. They came across the sea from Europe. China's walls, visible and invisible, crumbled over time. The Great Wall could not protect the Middle Kingdom from its enemies. Some overcame it with force, others found the gates were opened for them. Yet it remains a symbol of national power. North of Beijing, where the stone dragon winds majestically over mountains and across ravines, this architectural masterpiece will still leave you speechless. The myth of the Great Wall in people's minds will always be more powerful than the truth of its checkered history.